Within the NFL draft, there are winners and losers every year, and teams win and lose drafts. And because we live in an era where articles or tweets from years ago can and will be brought up at any time, it's always funny to see bad takes several years later, like the 2012 Seahawks draft being all-time bad, despite having a Hall of Fame quarterback in Russell Wilson and all-pro linebacker in Bobby Wagner. But in today's video, we are going to be discussing some of the biggest individual losers from the 2022 draft and why they lost and their situation did not improve so that they can become a better player and produce more for their respective NFL franchises. So without further ado, let's begin. And we are going to start today's video with Titans quarterback Ryan Tannehill for a couple of reasons, because it's more than just Malik Willis becoming his backup with a third-round pick. The Titans are a franchise that, in a lot of ways, took the league by storm starting back in 2019, and Ryan Tannehill playing at a Pro Bowl level and being the comeback player of the year that year played a huge part in that. But since then, they've lost back-to-back playoff games, and that is due in some part to Tannehill. And Ryan will play this season at 34 years old, so he's obviously not getting any younger, and especially this past year put up a stinker against the Bengals. Now, I feel bad for him personally, believe me, I do. As he said recently, the loss this past year in the playoffs put him in a dark place and that it was a deep scar. And again, I feel horrible for him personally, but the Titans as a franchise also know and realize it is a business and that Ryan may not be the long-term answer they once thought he was. And in addition to this, with having paid both Ryan and King Henry, A.J. Brown was either getting paid or traded, and it had been building for some time, and the best receiver the Titans have had in the past decade was traded for a first-round pick, which was used on receiver Treylon Burks from Arkansas. And don't get me wrong, I love Treylon Burks the player, but will he be good as A.J. Brown in 2022 as they push for a Super Bowl title? I'm going to say probably not, and this is a team that believes they can compete for a Super Bowl, as in the past year they beat the Bills and Chiefs, and the Chiefs by 3 scores at that, and was the number 1 seed in the AFC. But the Titans downgraded at a major position of need and didn't get better in a conference where they desperately needed to get better. And the AFC certainly isn't waiting around for Tennessee to get through this little hiccup. And if you maintained this offseason in the AFC, meaning you are exactly as talented as you were in 2022 as you were in 2021, you more than likely got worse compared to other teams in the conference. Because Tennessee didn't even maintain, as they got a receiver who is not as good of a player as they traded away, and they lost a big player in Roger Saffold, a guard to the Buffalo Bills. And think about what will happen when Ryan throws an interception this year, or doesn't make a throw quick enough by a tenth of a second, and a 60-yard bomb turns into an incomplete pass. Who's going to be standing right there when he comes off the field every single time? The home crowd's best friend, and that is the backup quarterback. This situation reminds me a lot of the 2020 Philadelphia Eagles, though I do think the Titans are better than what they were collectively, but from a quarterback situation of Tannehill and Malik Willis gives me flashbacks of Carson Wentz and Jalen Hurts. Next up is Mac Jones, and this is for only a couple, but they are big reasons. And the first one, believe it or not, doesn't have anything to do with Cole Strange at 29. No. Why Mac Jones lost the draft process this time around is because of what other teams in the division and around the conference have done to build around their young quarterbacks. Look no further than Miami, for example, who has a quarterback entering a very pivotal year of his career in Tua Tagovailoa, and they acquire one of the most dynamic receivers we've ever seen in NFL history in Tyreek Hill. And of course what the Jets have done with Zach Wilson to get every weapon they have for him over the past 2 years. And look, I get Bill Belichick is the greatest head coach of all time, and I also read comments and understand where people are coming from when they say, oh, imagine thinking you know more than Bill Belichick, and that's never the intention behind these questions or concerns. But what did the Patriots do between the minute they lost in the wild card round of the playoffs to the now big brother in the division in the Buffalo Bills to now to get better and to say we're competing with these guys next year, and if we meet again in the playoffs, we're going to beat them? Because it certainly wasn't getting better offensively and helping Mac Jones be the guy in the AFC and have other teams fear the New England Patriots offense. That's obviously not limited to just the draft, because they didn't help the offense in the offseason either, but the draft wasn't great for the Pats. Cole Strange is what it is. It's an overdraft, and I hope he becomes a good player, and he should be a starter for a couple of years, really at minimum. But to say to Mac Jones, hey Mac, here's your answer and what we need in our offense: Tyquan Thornton. When Tyquan is a player who struggles at times to catch the football and is a very, very raw receiver when there were significantly better football players on the board at that time. Look, if Tyquan is your guy, by all means, take him in the early or mid part of the 4th round because he more than likely would have been there, but to expect him to be validated as a top 50 pick over George Pickens and Sky Moore especially, to me can't help but give flashbacks to choosing Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson, and the Patriots receiving core right now of Jakobi Meyers, Devontae Parker, Kendrick Bourne, Nelson Agholor, and Tyquan Thornton, simply put, is not good. Is it okay? Sure. But does it compete with the elites of the elite in the AFC, which would surely be needed to in order for the Patriots to win a 7th ring in the Bill Belichick era before he hangs the headset up, whenever that is? In Skip Bayless's words, no, how about a big fat no? And Mac Jones will not be able to reach his full potential this year, due in some part to this draft class and this offseason. And next up is Justin Fields of the Chicago Bears, and this is him specifically because I don't think the Bears draft was all that bad from a team building standpoint, but what has to be remembered when discussing the Bears draft is they didn't have a first-round pick because of trading up for Fields a year ago. And Chicago had 2 top 50 picks, with one being their own, of course, and the other being from the Khalil Mack trade with the Chargers. And for a team whose offense is woeful, and especially the wide receiver room, they didn't give Justin another receiver to pair next to Darnell Mooney. And I did say the Bears receiving room is horrific, and it is, but there's always a debate or a sticking up for Mooney, and there seems to be this idea that he's a future wide receiver one and that he's going to be a 1,500-yard player for 2 or 3 or even more seasons of his career. And while I like Darnell and hope he can become that player at some point, I always welcoming being wrong about players who I don't think are as good as some people hype him up to be. But I don't think he's a top 3 or 4 player or has the potential to be a top 3 or 4 player at his position, period. The Velus Jones pick is one I've been adamant on where I don't like it, and to bring in a player who is a year older than current Bills linebacker Tremaine Edmunds, who's been in the league since 2018, by the way, is beyond me, meaning where they drafted him more specifically in the top 75 picks. The Bears secondary is loaded now, and I love what they have going on with both Brisker and Kyler Gordon and Jalen Johnson, but you have a quarterback who you have 2 first-round picks invested in and have a bottom 5 offense in the entire league around him. Unless Chicago's plan is to say, look, we know we're going to be bad in 2022, and we are prepared to go all the way in 2023 with Fields, I don't understand the thought process, and even if that hypothetically is the plan, you're very much playing with fire here because he may already be ruined beyond salvation if he predictably does not do good again this year. The offensive line isn't good, the receivers aside from Mooney aren't good, and at that point you can double team Mooney and effectively take him out of the game. And while Cole Kmet is a good tight end and a player I very much believe in, but will he save Fields from this offense in this situation? No. For the life of me, I don't understand what Chicago is doing, what their game plan is to help their young quarterback is, and where they are taking this franchise. Mitch Trubisky never had great weapons aside from Allen Robinson, and you'd think that would be a point of emphasis when rebuilding again. Let's stockpile on early round offensive players so we don't run into this a couple of years later. But the Bears seemingly didn't learn a damn thing, and Justin Fields came out of the 2022 NFL Draft as a quarterback whose offense did not improve. And next we go to Baker Mayfield of the Cleveland Browns, and this has been a mess for a while, but with Baker and the Browns coming off of the season they had in 2020, the future looked bright, and in 2021, everything they built came crashing down because they had a quarterback have countless injuries and try to play through them at that, and there were a few games that were just horrific losses for Cleveland, either by score, like the Patriots game, or in ways they just lost close games, like in Baltimore. But for a player who at his peak has been a talented player, to have your boss say, nah, we don't want you, and give up the future for Deshaun Watson, and to not trade you before the draft, despite you saying, I'm never playing for this franchise again, is what it's been for Baker from a football standpoint for a couple of months now, and that's an L. I want Baker to succeed, as the NFL, and especially on social media, is a very fun time when Baker is playing good, but unfortunately we won't see that again with him in Cleveland. The last few months have been extremely rough for him, and the draft process, with the Browns trading multiple first-round picks, was a cherry on top. And with that being said, that's all I have for today's video. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, now is the time I ask you to please leave a like and subscribe to the channel, because it would truly mean the world. Please join the Discord, it's a fun time, I highly recommend, and the link is in the bio. And until next time, as always, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.